Welcome back to Grade 8 Math. We are now looking in the chapter Integers, and we are on chapter 6.4, which is the multiplication of integers. Just to do a little quick review with the multiplication of integers, what we're looking at now is the first number indicating the direction and the length of the first step in our number line, and the second number tells us how many times we're moving either in the same direction or in the opposite direction. So if we have something moving positively in a positive number of times, my resulting answer will be positive. If I am moving in a positive direction, but I'm looking how many times ago it was in the past, I'll actually be moving in the negative direction. If I'm facing the negative direction and I'm multiplying a certain length in the negative direction, I'll continue moving in that direction negatively. And if I'm facing the negative direction and I'm moving in the past backwards, two negatives make a positive. So this is just a quick review. You can look at the notes that we did in class for the last example. When we have sequential multiplications, this means when you have more than one multiplication in the same problem, you can break it down two signs at a time. So two numbers at a time. So let's start with this first one is -5 times +4 times -2. Well, I start with the first two numbers, -5 times +4, which means I'm going to -5 4 more times. So the distance between 0 to -5 4 more times brings me to 5 times 4 is 20, and negative times positive is -20. If I use the number line, it means I'm going to -5, then -10, then -15, and then -20. That's the fourth time. And then my times -2 is there. Now, if I'm going to combine these two, this means I am moving -20, but I'm going in the past. What was it 2 times ago if I continued this pattern from before? So from 0 to -20 in the past means 0 to 20, but twice would be 0 to 40. So 2 times 20 is 40, and negative times negative is positive. If you need to review why this happens in terms of the actual model, I can review that in class. But if you understand the rules of negative times negative is positive, then it ends up being a little bit easier to solve these problems. But it does help to really understand why this occurs. Now, when we solve these, you can pause the video, try this on your own, and I'll do this fairly quickly. What you can do also is multiply all the numbers together. So 2 times 2 times 2 times 2, which is 2 to the 4th, or 16. And now I can use the signs. Positive times negative is negative. Negative times negative is positive. And positive times negative is negative. What we can also do is see how many negative signs were in our problem. If there's an odd number of negative signs, my answer will be negative. So I have 1, 2, 3 negative signs. That's an odd number because they won't cancel out completely, so I'm left with that one extra negative. Remember that 2 negatives cancel out to make a positive. When I have 3 of them, unfortunately, it stays negative. Now this one, I could do the same thing. I'll multiply all my numbers together. 1 times 3 times 5 times 2 times 1. 1 times 3 is 3 times 5 is 15 times 2 is 30 times 1 is 30. And now I look at my signs. I have negative, negative, positive, negative, negative. Because I have 4 negatives in there, they each will cancel out with each other, and I'll make positive 30. What you could do is try that on a calculator as well to make sure that you are correct. -2 to the 4th power. Well, let's expand this a little bit. This is -2 times -2 times -2 times -2. If we want to try to kind of break it down slowly, let's start slowly again. -2 times -2. 2 times 2 is 4, and negative times negative is positive. And I still have the rest of my -2's there. So now I have -4 times -2 is 8, but 4 negative times positive is -8. And now 8 times 2 is 16, and negative times negative is positive. The faster way of solving this is just by doing 2 to the 4th power, and 2 to the 4th power is 16. And now I look at my signs. Well, I have a negative sign here, and that's to the 4th power. That means I have 4 negative signs. Negative, 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 negative. They cancel out in pairs, which means that I'll be left with a positive in the end. Letter E says -2 to the 5th power. Well, let's try it the fast way. 2 to the 5th power is 32. Now, negative to the fifth power. Negative to the fifth power means there's 5 negative signs. So negative, 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 negative. They would each cancel out in pairs. So this would cancel out with this one. This one would cancel out with this one. I'd be left with that lone negative sign because it's an odd power. Because it's an odd power, my answer will be negative if my original question was a negative power, negative base. So take a look at some of the examples in the textbook in the homework. Hopefully you understood kind of the relationship between positives and negatives. And if you want to review the model in class, we can review that again. And then we'll be moving on to division of integers in the next lesson. So hopefully you